Most men fear rejection. Rejection is not about worth, it's about emotional neediness. And most people misunderstand this because they confuse desire with dependence. Wanting someone is natural. Needing them to validate you is where attraction collapses. Emotional neediness is subtle, and that's why it's dangerous. It doesn't always show up as begging or obvious desperation. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining yourself, seeking reassurance too early, constantly checking for responses, or adjusting your personality just to be liked. The moment your emotional stability depends on how someone reacts to you, you silently hand them power over your self-esteem. And human beings, especially in romantic dynamics, are instinctively repelled by power imbalance. Not because they are cruel, but because imbalance creates pressure, and pressure suffocates attraction. When a man ties his sense of worth to whether he is accepted or rejected, he begins to perform instead of exist. His words are no longer authentic, they are strategic. His kindness becomes a transaction. His confidence becomes fragile. Women are highly perceptive to this shift because emotional intelligence is wired into survival instincts. They can sense when interest comes from fullness versus when it comes from emptiness. Fullness feels calm, grounded, and safe. Emptiness feels restless, urgent, and heavy. Emotional neediness communicates without words, I need you to feel okay about myself. And that creates an unspoken burden. No one wants to feel responsible for another adult's emotional stability, especially in the early stages of attraction. This is why rejection often has nothing to do with looks, money, or intelligence. A man can have all the external traits society praises and still experience repeated rejection if he is emotionally hungry for approval. Neediness collapses polarity because it places the woman in the position of emotional authority. Attraction thrives on mutual choice, not silent dependency. The more a man seeks confirmation that he is enough, the more he signals that he does not believe it himself. Confidence is not loud or performative. It is the quiet absence of needing to be validated. When someone is emotionally self-sufficient, rejection does not threaten their identity, and that inner security is deeply attractive. Emotionally grounded men approach connection with curiosity rather than expectation. They allow space for things to unfold instead of trying to control outcomes. They are not attached to being liked by everyone, and that detachment paradoxically makes them more desirable. Rejection, when it happens, is processed as information, not as a personal failure. This emotional maturity changes the entire dynamic. Instead of asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" the grounded mind asks, "Was this aligned?" That shift alone removes desperation from interactions and replaces it with clarity. Emotional neediness often comes from unresolved wounds, not from lack of value. Past neglect, inconsistent affection, or conditional love teaches people to seek external confirmation of worth. Without awareness, those patterns repeat in adult relationships. Healing begins when a man learns to sit with uncertainty without collapsing, to tolerate silence without anxiety, and to maintain self-respect even when interest is not returned. When approval is no longer chased, presence becomes stronger, boundaries become clearer, and attraction is no longer forced but invited. Men who don't seek validation naturally attract it because their sense of self is not outsourced to other people's opinions. They move through the world with an internal anchor, not constantly scanning for reassurance, approval, or confirmation that they are enough. This internal stability changes the way they speak, the way they listen, and the way they hold silence. There is no urgency in their tone, no hidden agenda behind their words. They are present rather than performative. When a man is not trying to be liked, his behavior becomes relaxed and authentic, and that authenticity is rare in a world full of people trying to earn acceptance. People feel this difference immediately, even if they cannot explain it logically. Validation-seeking behavior often reveals itself through subtle cues: over-agreeing, excessive politeness, trying to impress, or shaping one's personality around what might be appealing. These behaviors are not attractive because they communicate uncertainty about one's own value. When a man constantly looks for external confirmation, he unintentionally signals that he does not trust himself. In contrast, a man who trusts his own judgment does not need to prove anything. He can disagree without fear, walk away without resentment, and remain calm without withdrawing. That calmness creates psychological safety, and safety is one of the deepest foundations of attraction. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin because it allows others to relax around them as well. When validation is not the goal, interactions become lighter and more genuine. Conversations are no longer driven by the need to impress, but by curiosity and presence. This shift changes the emotional energy entirely. Instead of asking, "Do you like me?" the interaction silently asks, "Do we connect?" That difference matters. Mutual connection feels balanced. Validation seeking feels one-sided. Men who do not seek validation allow others the freedom to choose them without pressure. And when people are free, they are far more likely to lean in. The absence of neediness creates space, and space allows attraction to grow naturally. There is also a quiet confidence in men who do not chase validation because their self-respect sets clear boundaries. They do not tolerate disrespect, mixed signals, or emotional games, not out of pride, but out of self-awareness. They know their time and energy have value, so they invest them intentionally. This selectiveness makes their attention feel meaningful rather than desperate. When attention is not easily given, it becomes more valuable. People instinctively sense when they are being chosen rather than used as a source of reassurance, and that feeling deepens emotional interest. At a deeper level, not seeking validation reflects emotional maturity. It means a man has learned to sit with himself without discomfort, to experience uncertainty without panic, and to accept that not everyone will approve of him. This acceptance removes the fear of rejection, and without fear, behavior becomes grounded. Grounded behavior is consistent, predictable, and emotionally safe. Over time, this consistency builds trust and admiration. Validation then arrives organically, not because it was demanded, but because people naturally acknowledge strength, self-assurance, and inner alignment when they encounter it. Emotional independence is the strongest form of confidence because it is rooted in self-regulation rather than external approval. It means a person can experience desire without desperation, connection without attachment, and disappointment without collapse. This type of confidence is quiet and steady, not performative or loud. It does not need to announce itself or prove anything. When a man is emotionally independent, his emotional state is not dictated by how others treat him, respond to him, or validate him. He can enjoy attention without becoming addicted to it, and handle rejection without internalizing it as a flaw. This emotional steadiness creates a sense of depth and reliability that people naturally gravitate toward. Most people confuse confidence with assertiveness or dominance, but emotional independence goes much deeper. It is the ability to remain grounded in uncertainty, to tolerate silence without anxiety, and to maintain self-respect even when outcomes are unclear. An emotionally independent man does not rush emotional processes or force connections to move faster than they should. He understands that attraction, trust, and intimacy unfold naturally, not through pressure or control. Because he is not afraid of being alone, he does not cling to people out of fear. That absence of fear changes everything about how he shows up in relationships. His presence feels calm rather than demanding, open rather than needy. Emotional independence also transforms communication. A man who is secure within himself does not over-explain, over-apologize, or overcompensate. He speaks clearly and listens fully without trying to manage the other person's emotions. He allows others to have their reactions without taking them personally. This emotional neutrality is powerful because it signals strength and maturity. People feel safer around someone who is not emotionally volatile or reactive. Confidence, in this sense, is not about control over others, but control over one's internal world. The ability to self-soothe, to pause before reacting, and to respond rather than react is a rare skill, and rarity amplifies attraction. Attraction thrives in emotional freedom, and emotional independence creates exactly that. When a man does not rely on someone else to feel whole, the interaction becomes a choice rather than a necessity. This balance preserves polarity and mutual respect. Instead of seeking reassurance, he offers stability. Instead of chasing connection, he allows it to develop. People are drawn to this dynamic because it removes pressure and expectation. Emotional independence communicates without words, I am complete on my own and I invite you into my life not to fill a void, but to share an experience. That message is deeply appealing because it places connection in the realm of desire rather than need. On a deeper level, emotional independence reflects self-awareness and healing. It often comes from confronting one's fears, insecurities, and unmet emotional needs rather than projecting them onto others. A man who has done this inner work is less likely to seek validation through attention or approval. He values alignment over acceptance and authenticity over performance. This inner alignment creates a magnetic presence because it is consistent and real. Confidence built on emotional independence does not fluctuate with circumstances. It remains steady through success, failure, attraction, and rejection alike. Attraction grows in freedom, not pressure, because desire cannot survive where it feels monitored, rushed, or controlled. The moment pressure enters a connection, curiosity begins to collapse. Pressure communicates expectation, and expectation turns interest into obligation. When someone feels obligated to respond, to reassure, or to commit before they are emotionally ready, the natural rhythm of attraction is disrupted. Instead of leaning in, the instinct becomes self-protection. Freedom, on the other hand, allows attraction to unfold organically. It creates space for anticipation, imagination, and emotional choice, which are essential elements of desire. Many people unknowingly apply pressure by over-investing too quickly. Constant messaging, seeking reassurance, asking for clarity too early, or trying to define the relationship before it has emotionally formed are all subtle forms of control. These behaviors are often driven by anxiety rather than intention. The underlying message becomes, I need this to happen so I can feel secure. While the desire for security is human, forcing emotional timelines creates resistance. Attraction needs room to breathe. When someone is free to come and go emotionally, interest deepens because it is self-directed rather than coerced. Freedom in attraction does not mean emotional distance or indifference. It means emotional safety without attachment. A man who understands this does not withdraw to appear mysterious, nor does he chase to appear invested. He stays present without gripping the outcome. His interest is clear, but his emotional stability does not depend on reciprocation. This balance creates a powerful dynamic where the other person feels seen but not trapped. Freedom allows a woman to explore her feelings at her own pace, which often leads her to invest more deeply than if she were pushed toward a decision. Pressure also distorts authenticity. When someone feels they must maintain interest or meet expectations, they begin to perform rather than express. Conversations lose spontaneity and interactions feel calculated. Freedom restores honesty. In a pressure-free environment, people reveal themselves naturally. They speak more openly, express boundaries more clearly, and show their true emotional responses. This authenticity strengthens attraction because it builds real connection rather than a constructed image designed to please. At a psychological level, freedom preserves polarity and desire. Attraction thrives on choice. When a person feels they are choosing rather than being chased or evaluated, their sense of agency remains intact. Agency fuels desire because it reinforces autonomy and self-trust. A man who allows freedom demonstrates confidence in himself and in the process. He does not need to control outcomes because he trusts that what is meant to align will align without force. This trust is deeply attractive because it reflects emotional maturity and self-respect. Pressure often stems from fear of loss, but fear is not an attractive emotion. It tightens behavior, accelerates attachment, and disturbs emotional balance. Freedom, by contrast, communicates abundance. It suggests that connection is desired but not required for self-worth. This emotional abundance shifts the dynamic from pursuit to mutual interest. When freedom is present, attraction is not demanded. It is discovered, explored, and chosen naturally. Self-respect creates safety and desire because it establishes clear emotional boundaries and consistent behavior, both of which are essential for healthy attraction. When a man respects himself, he does not tolerate disrespect, confusion, or emotional inconsistency. This is not about ego or rigidity. It is about self-awareness and emotional responsibility. People feel safe around someone who knows where they stand and what they will and will not accept. Safety is built through predictability, and predictability comes from self-respect. When actions align with values, there is no emotional chaos, no mixed signals, and no silent resentment building beneath the surface. Desire grows where there is emotional safety because safety allows vulnerability. A man with self-respect does not abandon his needs to be liked, nor does he suppress his truth to avoid discomfort. He communicates clearly and listens without defensiveness. This clarity removes emotional guesswork, which many people unconsciously find exhausting. When someone knows that a man will not tolerate disrespect but will also not punish honesty, they feel free to express themselves. That freedom deepens intimacy. Self-respect signals strength, and strength that is calm and contained is deeply attractive. Without self-respect, attraction becomes unstable. When a man accepts poor treatment, chases inconsistent attention, or stays in situations that diminish him, he communicates that his boundaries are flexible and his worth is negotiable. This creates discomfort rather than closeness. Even if affection exists, desire begins to erode because imbalance replaces mutual respect. Attraction requires polarity, and polarity collapses when one person consistently sacrifices themselves to maintain connection. Self-respect restores balance by ensuring that interest is mutual rather than one-sided. Self-respect also shapes how a man handles conflict and rejection. Instead of reacting emotionally or trying to prove his value, he remains composed. He can disagree without becoming aggressive and walk away without becoming bitter. This emotional regulation reinforces safety because it shows that connection does not come at the cost of emotional instability. A man who respects himself does not need to dominate or submit. He stands firm. This firmness allows others to relax because they are not required to manage his emotions or reassure his insecurities. Desire is closely linked to trust, and trust grows when behavior is consistent over time. Self-respect ensures consistency. A man who values himself does not make promises he cannot keep, nor does he compromise his integrity for temporary approval. His actions are aligned with his words, which builds credibility. Credibility creates attraction because it signals reliability and depth. People are drawn to those whose presence feels solid rather than unpredictable. At a deeper level, self-respect reflects inner alignment. It shows that a man has done the internal work to understand his values, limits, and emotional needs. This alignment radiates outward. It influences how he chooses partners, how he invests energy, and how he responds to uncertainty. When self-respect is present, attraction is not forced or negotiated. It emerges naturally from mutual regard, emotional safety, and authentic desire. When you stop fearing rejection, it loses control over you because fear is what gives rejection its emotional weight. Rejection itself is simply an outcome, a response, a piece of information. The pain attached to it comes from the meaning you assign to it. When rejection is interpreted as proof of inadequacy, it threatens identity, self-worth, and belonging. That is why it feels overwhelming. But when a man no longer sees rejection as a verdict on his value, it becomes neutral. The emotional charge disappears. Fear keeps people stuck in anticipation, constantly adjusting behavior to avoid an unwanted outcome. Once that fear dissolves, behavior becomes freer, more authentic, and more grounded. The need to manage impressions fades, and with it, the anxiety that drives overthinking and self-doubt. Fear of rejection controls actions long before rejection ever happens. It dictates what is said, what is hidden, and what is tolerated. Men who fear rejection often hesitate to express interest, suppress boundaries, or stay in situations that do not serve them simply to avoid being dismissed. This fear creates internal tension, and tension is always visible, even when unspoken. It shows up in rushed conversations, people-pleasing, and emotional overinvestment. When the fear is removed, clarity replaces confusion. A man can express interest without attachment, speak honestly without rehearsing outcomes, and walk away without resentment. Rejection, when it occurs, no longer feels like loss, but like alignment filtering itself naturally. Stopping the fear of rejection also changes perception. Instead of viewing rejection as something to be avoided at all costs, it becomes a sorting mechanism. Not everyone is meant to connect, and that reality stops feeling personal when emotional independence is present. A man who does not fear rejection understands that compatibility is mutual, not earned. This understanding brings calm into interactions. Calm creates confidence, and confidence changes how others respond. Ironically, the less a man fears rejection, the less frequently he experiences it because his energy no longer communicates need or insecurity. He is no longer asking to be chosen. He is participating in a mutual evaluation. Rejection only has control when it can alter self-perception. When self-worth is stable, rejection cannot destabilize it. A man who is secure within himself does not collapse emotionally when interest is not returned. He processes the moment, feels the disappointment if it exists, and moves forward without internal damage. This resilience is powerful because it reflects self-trust. Self-trust allows a man to take emotional risks without fear of self-betrayal. He knows that even if the outcome is unfavorable, he will remain intact. That certainty removes hesitation and replaces it with grounded presence. Presence is felt immediately by others because it carries no hidden agenda, no silent bargaining, no emotional urgency. When fear no longer dictates behavior, freedom takes its place. Freedom to show interest honestly. Freedom to set boundaries without guilt. Freedom to accept no without internal collapse. In that freedom, rejection becomes just another response rather than a defining moment. Control shifts inward. Emotional power returns to where it belongs, within the self, rather than being placed in the hands of others' opinions or choices.